Mamba out.
Drippin', saucy, yeah. Bitch, I do this often. My bitch is bad, she always in office. Don't got a tags on running my body. Can't see the pads, I'm living too fast. With 20, my dash, I'm up, but I lost him. He wanna brag, I emptied his bag and took what he had. Don't care what it cost him. Then he broke, he turned to a hoe. I seen him before, the shit get exhausting. Ran out of hope, I wanna be known. The stage of my soul, you Randy Moss. I even broke.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sports Now with Darius and Aiden. Today we are talking about the NBA's best defenders. Best defenders from the three, best defenders of shooting, best on-ball defenders, best defenders in the paint. You name it, we'll talk about it. Darius, start us off.
Well, Aiden, when we talk about some of the best defense players, we can bring up big-time names like Giannis, reigning defense player of the year. We talk about Kawhi Leonard. Some maybe put in LeBron James to the conversation, but Aiden, I'm going to answer the question directly. Who is the best defender entirety, the whole word defense, both along the perimeter and in the paint? I'm going to bring up two names, Aiden. Rudy Gobert, multiple-time defense player of the year, and Ben Simmons, who is a very underrated defender in my mind. Now, Aiden, when we talk about Rudy Gobert, we don't see him as the ideal offensive player. And with him taking on one of the main roles of being one of the best players on the team with the best record in the league, a part of the Utah Jazz, multiple-time defense player of the year, and Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz, Aiden. I just found out the Utah Jazz are, I believe, the number one ranked defensive team in the league. And that would not happen if it wasn't for the contribution and the help of multiple-time defensive player Rudy Gobert. Look at Gobert's plus minus around 7.6. I think that's relatively good. On all defensive rating is a team best, and minus 11.2 for the Utah Jazz, and a huge part of that is Rudy Gobert. And when you look at the multitude of big men Rudy Gobert goes up against day in and day out, like he's facing up against Jokic and Zion and Kristaps and Giannis and KD and Anthony Davis when healthy, just to name a few. Every single night or every other night when they face top premier teams and playoff contending teams. And especially with the age of shooting, especially with new forwards and centers and big men in the league, Rudy Gobert does have to step his game up when he's facing perimeter base big men like Kristaps or Nikola Vucevic. They maybe even throw Julius Randle of the New York Knicks into the conversation. So Rudy Gobert definitely needs his credit and needs credit where credit is due. Now let me move along to Ben Simmons, who according to NBA.com's Defensive Player Ladder, he is ranked second in Defensive Player of the Year favorite. He's the second favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year behind the one and only Rudy Gobert. Now you look at the Philadelphia 76ers. Philadelphia Sixers, the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, over the Boston Celtics, over the Milwaukee Bucks, and we can all say that's all in part of the MVP performance of Joel Embiid, who is my MVP, who's definitely stepped up in a huge way. He's in my conversation too for best defensive player in the league. But when you look at Ben Simmons, I'm looking at the competition. I looked at the competition, same thing for Rudy Gobert also. For Ben Simmons to earn an all-star reserve spot, even though he didn't play in the game. Ben Simmons is leading the league in deflections with 3.9. And he's also leading the league in loose ball recovered in 1.5 per game. That's per game. That's every single game Ben Simmons is doing that defensively. And look at the competition he's going up against in the Eastern Conference, going up against guys like Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic and Steph Curry and Dame Dollar and others in company as well. And some of those other premier guards in the league, Ben Simmons pretty much locks them down. I'm not saying he's going to lock them down in their time. I'm not saying they're going to score like 0 points per game. I'm about to go back to that Thursday game in TNT a couple of weeks ago when the Dallas Mavericks took on the Philadelphia 76ers. Ben Simmons, when he was matched up with Luka Doncic, Ben Simmons neutralized Luka Doncic, forced a multitude of turnovers on his part. I believe Luka Doncic had around like 9 turnovers that game. That's all in part of the defensive performance of Ben Simmons. So you can see the impact he has defensively for the 76ers. Now we talk about the performance of the 76ers. We did the 76ers contenders episode, I believe, like a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't already, make sure to check that out. We talked about the development of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and we talked about him being a difference player. Now, Aiden, when you talk about Rudy Gobert and Ben Simmons, those are not the ideal offensive players, but if it weren't for them, we can both agree that their respective teams will not be as good if they were not on the floor and not on the court. If Ben Simmons or Rudy Gobert got injured today, God willing they don't, but if they got injured
Hey,
today,
we saw it in the playoffs last year when Ben Simmons did get injured.
right? But if they both got injured today, the Utah Jazz would not be the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, and the Philadelphia 76ers, we would have a multitude of questions surrounding them and possibly the performance going into the playoffs and around April, May. So those are my 2 best defenders in the league. Honorable mentions Kawhi Leonard, of course. I believe he's the best on-ball defender. But when we talk about defender in its entirety, we talk about perimeter, mid-range, paint defense. Rudy Gobert and Ben Simmons are the top 2 that come to my mind. Aiden, you have the floor.
Right, I obviously agree with you. Both those points. Ben Simmons is my best defender in the league. But since you already touched on him, I'm going to touch on some other guys that we may not have mentioned previously. First, I'm going to go with your MVP, Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is a phenomenal defender. He's a phenomenal blocker. And here's what I'm going to say. His paint defense is almost unstoppable. His perimeter defense is okay. He's not gonna. The people he guards are at the 4 and the 5. At the 4 and the 5, you don't see a ridiculous amount of shooters. You're starting to introduce the shooting big man and the big man being a liable threat from the 3-pointer. You're just now starting to see that, but that's not common. But that's not common on every team you see in the NBA. You're not gonna always see a big man who can shoot the 3. So for his position and his positional defense, Ben Simmons is arguably the best at his position for that type of defense. Now, you could also argue for Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic, again, amazing paint defense. But again, the 4 and the 5, you don't see a ridiculous amount of shooters. Therefore, you don't need a ridiculous amount of 4 and 5s being able to guard the perimeter as a 4 and a 5. For lack of demand, lack of term. Hold on. You don't need a whole lot of big men, specifically the 5s and maybe the 4s, who can guard the perimeter as a 4 and a 5. Of course, there are some exceptions. Now let's talk about Kawhi Leonard for a minute. Kawhi Leonard, the best on-ball defender in the league, and has consistently been the best on-ball defender in the league. In fact, he is credited was the best defender in the league for the longest of times. Kawhi Leonard is a phenomenal player who could lead the Clippers to a championship. We haven't heard a whole lot about him. Then again, we haven't heard a whole lot of bad about him. You don't know, right? Now let's move on to some guards. I think we can move on to some guards. Darius touched on Ben Simmons. And you know what? I'm trying to piece together exactly who I want to say and how I want to say it. I'm going to say LaMelo Ball. I'm going to say LaMelo Ball, not necessarily as a top defender, but as a approaching top defender. LaMelo Ball is, I believe, the first to lead his rookie class in points, assists, and steals, if I'm not mistaken. LaMelo Ball obviously can guard the paint. He's 6'8". Like we saw with Ben Simmons. When you're 6'8", 6'10", you can guard you can block shots. You can block shots. You can play defense, right? What we see from LaMelo is kind of a little bit, I don't want to say watered down Ben Simmons on defense, but it's kind of what some people are going to come to as his defense evolves and might maybe even surpass Ben Simmons. We don't know yet. But LaMelo Ball is transcending on this league into becoming a better defender. Now, is he a better shooter, or is he a better scorer, or is he a better defender? We don't know that yet. We can't say for sure. The man is obviously a liable threat on the defensive side of the ball, but then again, he can have a 20.9, 30.9. We don't know yet. But that's who is my surprise placement as a top defender in the NBA. Well, I shouldn't say top defender, as a transcending defender in the NBA. That concludes my argument.
No, and I can see where you're coming from with that type of sentiment. I think the only reason why we consider Ben Simmons a top defender, and you consider LaMelo Ball a transcending defender, is because of relatively their size, particularly at the guard position. Of course, they can handle the ball, they can pass, they have to play and making and you can even have to. They may have the shooting if we're talking about LaMelo, the finishing ability, but defensively, not all of their ball is around one thing and one thing, probably really only, which is their size. And you talk about small guards with some defense, we really can't find any pieces outside of Patrick Beverley.
I constantly talk about Steph in this way, and Darius is gonna probably get mad at me for this. When we were doing our Warriors review, I said, who can defend on that team? Now, obviously, what I've said hasn't exactly. Kelly Oubre can defend. Yes, Draymond can still defend somewhat when he's playing well. But this is my main thing with Steph. The defense is lackluster. On the perimeter, yes, maybe it's average, but anywhere else on the court, Steph's not an everywhere defender. And you know what? That's okay. That's not his thing. He's a scorer. He's the best 3-point shooter of all time. That's what he does. And he doesn't need to be that. Some of these smaller guards, specifically at the point guard position, don't need to be their team top defender. It's not in their business. It's not in their business jurisdiction. They don't necessarily need to lead their team in the defensive categories because that's not because that's not part of their job description. You handle the ball, you get your other teammates involved, you score as much as you can yourself. And I think that we're sort of seeing that at the same time, not seeing it.
Right. Particularly with smaller guards. Yeah. Defensively wise, only name that really comes up to me and say he's just straight up defense. That's Patrick Beverley, and we all know how Patrick Beverley acts. Dating back to last season. Well, Aiden, do you have any final words?
No, I believe I'm about done, man.
Well, thank you for joining us here on Sports Sundays. Aiden, shout out to the fan who requested this video. If you haven't already, make sure this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. And also make sure you hit that bell for posts, notifications for every video, and update from our channel. Make sure to drop those video requests down below in the comments. Until then, everybody, I'm Darius Simons, and we will see you next week on a Monday, everybody. Until then, everybody, peace and love. Have a great weekend, everybody.